5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Space lasers again. Odysseus Space from Luxembourg focuses on providing optical communication solutions between space and Earth. If you seem to notice that is not the first episode on optical communications, you are indeed right. I just think this will be a potentially very big theme going forward. In any event, our guest this week is Odysseus CEO and co-founder Jordan Vannitsen. Enjoy.
My name is Raphael Rodkin. I'm the founding partner of E2MC, Earth to Mars Capital, a venture capital investor in dozens of space startups worldwide, among other roles I have, such as being a part-time podcast host. Just as a reminder, this podcast is for informational purposes only. It does not reflect any view by E2MC, and nothing should be taken as investment advice. Before we start, a quick favor. If you do enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app, such as Apple or Spotify. It does help other people find the podcast. Now on to today's episode.
Hey, space enthusiasts, welcome back to another episode. And it's actually another episode on optical communications, but it is a really important theme right now, which I'm sure we're going to delve into in this conversation. So in any event, very happy to have as our guest this week, Jordan Vannitsen from Odysseus Space in Luxembourg. And he's the CEO and co-founder there. Welcome, Jordan.
Hi, thank you, Raphael.
Cool. Jordan, the way we usually kick this off is with you giving like a quick elevator pitch on what you guys are up to.
Yeah, so at Odysseus Space, we build a space-to-ground laser communication as a service. We have the vision to connect with light-speed connectivity everywhere in the solar system. And we want to enable fast and secure communication to all human assets in space to Earth.
That's great. And actually, people who are listening every week to the Space Business Podcast, first of all, thank you very much if you're listening every week. And secondly, you will have noticed a few weeks ago, we had a company from France called Kai Labs and their CEO, JF Morizur, which was also about laser communications. But it's just a very important theme. So Jordan, you probably saw as well. So Elon tweeted or X'd or whatever we call it these days, like yesterday or the day before yesterday, about, SpaceX probably will have AI compute constellations in the future. And he specifically put in there that like, oh, those AI satellites will communicate via lasers. So I assume you're very excited about that.
Yes, I am. And actually, that's something also, we have seen for quite some time, because in the end, when you look at it, what people want is to have their data, in the most efficient way from A to B. Well, in our case, A being in space and B on Earth, but actually the hardware, the infrastructure are just an enabler, because in the end, you want to optimize how you transmit your data. Like you don't really care about the hardware, right? It's like in your home, you have optical fiber for internet, I guess. You have a modem.
Yep.
You probably don't know what's your modem brand, and you probably don't care. You just want, internet, right? So I think that's the next big step, is how you communicate things in the most efficient way. Optical links are one way, but of course it's how you manage, this network, and AI will come handy for that.
Yeah, and this is a great comparison. You're absolutely right. I just like when I do podcasts like this, yes, this runs over. I'm doing this from my office. There's a fiber line, as far as I know. And I only would ever start questioning that if there was connection problems. It should just be abstracted away and work. You're absolutely right about this. But it's funny, in sort of like the few minutes before we started recording, we talked a little about like, so yeah, we had Kai Labs just a few weeks ago, and then, but actually over the history of the podcast, like years ago, I had Mineric on, I had Skyloom, where I was an early angel investors on, and I've always loved optical because it seems so blindingly, pun intended, blindingly obvious. So why it seems like it should be everywhere already. Why don't you think it's not everywhere already? What's kind of holding it up?
Yeah, I think it's now a lot of people see the advantage of having a free space optical com, but we can see there is still a lack of massive adoptions, at least in the space sector. There are a few reasons for that. First, you have interoperability challenges. between different terminal in space or even like space to ground. Also, you can have high upfront cost for some of the technology. And, it's still it's not new as a technology, but as a normal commercial usage, it's still, not there yet. And you need to also know how to handle, the pointing and tracking, the communication. And there is still, all this complexity to it. So we see that a lot of people are thinking now, should I move there? But they are still hesitating because of all these factors. And this is what actually we are, tackling here, because the way we offer our space to ground laser comm, it's a way which actually reduces the cost and complexity of using optical communication.
Okay, that sounds like something that's worth talking in more detail about. So I assume if if I want to operate a satellite, let's say, doesn't matter, communication satellite or remote sensing satellite, right? Kind of everybody understands what that is, right? So I may generate a ton of data. Let's say I'm operating a hyperspectral satellite. I'm really generating a ton of data. Some of which I can hopefully I'm able to process on board, these days with like, a compute on board, but a lot of it, I still need to get back. And so you're saying what's holding me back from just kind of using your solution for now is, or somebody else's solution, if optical, is that it could be expensive. You mentioned interoperability standards, which we should also get into, and then you mentioned that it's not really new, but I guess it's new enough that like a lot of space people are conservative people, right? So they're like, let's go with something that actually works, because the last thing you want is set a satellite up there and then you
Right.
can't get your data back down. Okay, so let's go through how you're tackling these. We can start anywhere. Let's start with the cost. How you're tackling the cost issue.
Well, with the cost, the way we actually offer the solution, we make the space terminal for space to ground communication, and on the ground we deploy an optical ground station network with our ground station. And actually, what we sell to customers is a service of getting the data from space to ground, which means we actually don't sell the hardware. I mean, this is not the main business. We actually give the hardware for no upfront cost.
Okay, so it's actually like your comparison again from like here at home, like the phone
Yeah,
company gave me the
exactly.
modem for free, but I pay them every
Exactly.
month.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, you get it for free. Like you don't pay
Well,
upfront because
obviously I
you
pay.
pay,
Yeah,
right?
but I feel like it's it's the shift from, I guess, upfront CapEx to ongoing
Yes,
operational
exactly.
like OpEx, right? Kind of
Or
thing.
like a cell phone, right? You can
Yeah,
you can
exactly.
have the cell phone, have the subscription, or you can buy the cell phone separately, which is also what we offer. So for us, it's a way to help our customers to reduce at least the upfront cost first on the hardware, and then even during the service, the data we send so much data every day, but actually the price per gigabyte it's typically 10 times lower than other communication solution. I was even discussing with someone recently, and it was 200 times lower, the cost per gigabyte downloaded. So this is a way is to, provide the hardware no upfront cost, and also we can transmit a lot of data to the ground, so that reduces, the price per gigabit. And we have also a unique solution on the pointing acquisition and tracking system for space terminal, which actually we can do the link very fast, the acquisition link very fast with the ground station.
Which then I assume the practical effect of it is by every pass you get more data.
Yes. So if I give you an example, to give you some rough number, okay. If you are doing optical comm and you do space to ground, roughly you will have about, if you're in a low Earth orbit, you have about 4 minutes of communication when you're above an optical ground station. And what we have seen is terminals, who need 20 to 100 seconds to make, to establish the link, while we need 2 to 5. So, it means in that amount of time, then you can actually transmit data instead of just, focusing on trying to get the ground station. So all of this, for us, it's a way to send more data, also for a lower cost. And even the ground infrastructure we deploy, our stations are, I will say, um, they have the performance which is required for our customer, but they are not, over performance. So we have a bit, we can have a bit some constraints, in the deployment, but it means we can make them much cheaper and we can deploy more. So we look at, historical weather data where it's good to have optical communication. We go a bit in altitude. This is a strategy to, optimize how many paths we offer.
And so, how fast are these links these days? So, like in this, like 4 minutes you mentioned, like how much data can you actually get down?
In our case, we are working on a solution with 10 gigabit per second, and we are going to increase also this data rate in the near future. But for now, it's 10 gigabit per second. Because you can have solution which goes to 100 or 1 tera, but then it's also a matter of can the satellite actually handle, this kind of data rate? Is there actually a need for that? And even when you arrive on the ground, how do you, send the data? So what we saw on the market, with our customers, it's 10 gigabit per second for them. They're happy with it. And 1 terabyte a day. But of course, we'll increase that. And to complement on what you were saying earlier, where observation, they need to also pre-process data, right? The thing is that even when you pre-process data, we are still generating more and more and more data now. And you actually have some missions which are designed in a way that, the satellite will use what's available currently in RF. So if you can change, this frame when you go to the customer and you say, okay, now, you can send your data at 10 gigabit per second. You can have 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte a day of data. That can also change even their way of doing the mission, and that can open new kind of business model, which was not possible before.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then the way you're charging then works, I assume you basically charge by the quantity of data, like per gigabyte or something like that.
The way we do, yes, the way we do, we actually have different kind of offers, but I will say the main one is we offer 1 terabyte a day. You pay a certain amount a month, and you get your data and you get your hardware.
Okay. And I'm assuming again it's a little bit similar to what's going on with my cell phone and my like home fiber that because you guys are giving that upfront equipment, I probably have to commit to like a certain amount,
Um,
right?
yes, that's correct. Yes. In that case, if you
That's
want
fair.
to get, the hardware for no upfront cost, there is a commitment. If you want to purchase the hardware separately, there is no commitment.
Oh, okay. So you can actually do that as well. You can
Yeah,
like, okay, gotcha.
like a cell phone,
Okay.
really like a cell phone subscription.
Okay, but then actually let's open up this bracket on this other issue you mentioned, the interoperability. So like what
Okay.
if someone has a satellite there and it's I don't know, they're having a Skyloom or a Mynaric
Mhm.
terminal. Does
Mhm.
that can it talk to your ground station or do we have these like interoperability issues?
Well, yes, we can talk to our ground station as long as they are SDA compatible because
Okay.
our station is SDA compatible. However, what we have seen so far, is that a lot of these terminals, even though they can do a space to ground link, are capable of doing that. We have seen that they are more optimized for inter-satellite link.
Space to space. Yeah.
Yes. Which means, when they want to do the pointing to the ground station, they likely take way more time than our terminal. So
Gotcha.
yes, we are compatible. It's just, every pass, you may be in a situation where you can actually transmit a bit less data.
Okay, which is like sort of the reason people should just go for the full. You designed this integrated solution, and for a reason, it like people should just go for the integrated.
Yes, yes, but yet, I still think it's important to stay open and to be able to communicate with others as well.
Yeah, and then by the way, yeah. So we talked about this in past episodes, like obviously the difference between in-space optical communications and then sort of the additional complexity of going through the Earth's atmosphere, which just makes things more difficult. But you
Yes.
know, tell me about this because it seems interesting. Because again, sort of like I angel invested in Skyloom like maybe 6 years ago or so, right? And I remember, and then I've been following optical communications all along. I remember, like for many years, people were sort of like, yeah, yeah, space to space, like space to ground, no, horribly difficult, like maybe sometime. And now I'm having these same conversations, even with many of the same people, and it seems most people like, yeah, like it works, we solved it. Is that like, did everyone just suddenly like solve going through the atmosphere? Is that also what you're sensing, or is it?
Well, I will say different, there are different approach to it. So our approach, specifically, if you talk about space to ground, our approach is actually to deploy at places where you have a good weather most of the time, when you have a steady atmosphere, where actually you have good condition for optical communication links. So we are also, using a wavelength which get less disturbed by the atmosphere still, but less. Um, and our idea is to offer multi-site, a lot of sites. So we have already, an agreement with 12 location. We did not deploy yet at this location, but we are going to deploy there. And we actually see that it also offer more downlink opportunities to the customer. Instead of having, one station which can go, through the cloud and a very expensive station, we decided to make stations which are, I would say, more cost effective. And the idea is to deploy more and to offer more downlink opportunities.
Okay, so talk me through a little bit the rationale for this sort of architecture you described there as well, right? Because unless I'm missing something, one alternative would be basically you use in-space lasers and connect to some constellation like Starlink or Amazon Leo in the future, which itself will be interconnected via lasers, so very fast, right?
Right.
And then it just goes back to some ground station. Why did you choose to have like your own, or why are you planning your own network of ground stations versus like these other, like people sometimes call them like as relay solutions?
Yeah, I think you need both actually. And we are going to go into the intersatellite link market as well. Except we wanted to focus on space to ground first. Because at this stage, yes, you have more and more, that's true, more and more constellation, being deployed with intersatellite link capabilities. Yet we saw that there were more already companies, who are doing already space to ground with RF and who already need this solution. So we're thinking, let's, focus on this market where you have more companies who want space to ground and just a few mega constellations doing intersatellite link, which often, they want to verticalize. Yet we see, it's a complementary business because you still have a bottleneck. If you just use intersatellite link for lasercom, you still want to transmit your data to the ground. And I believe at some point, we will come to a time where you will have optical com, between all satellites and between also directly linked to the ground. So I think space to ground is still something which needs to be achieved. And then you have other consideration, which I will say are like beyond commercial. Because if you will have asked me, a couple of years ago, what was the biggest demand for optical com, I would have said it's commercial, it's to send more data. But now we see more and more demand, from defense, where optical communication, because of the narrow beam of the laser, it's actually a very secure communication. And in the future, you can also implement quantum key distribution to add, one more layer of security. So now imagine if you have your, satellite and you want to send your data, but let's say you're a European satellite and you want to send your data through, I don't know, actually through Starlink. Maybe you don't want, Starlink data passing through. So there is also this need of having, depending on the countries and the need, a direct access to your ground station or to certain area where you deploy your ground station. So I think it's beyond just commercial, there's also more and more defense and geopolitical aspects of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because of the higher security element of optical communications, like you're pointing out. But so if you have these like sovereignty, let's call them like that type demand. Okay, so you brought up the example. Okay, maybe European government doesn't want to run through Starlink because what if there's some shit fight and they they shut off the connection or something? But
Mhm.
like, could that also bring up issues on the other end? Let's say, like, do you think the governments are they fine sharing like ground stations, or like would they say like no, like the German government wants like their own dedicated ground station, the French government wants their own dedicated ground station. But I guess you could accommodate that if that demand arises.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's so many demands to details, but yes, I mean, uh, if there is a need, we could accommodate. But it's true that usually, if you talk to defense, they want to use their own location or their own station. Like, in that case, they are less interested in the subscription model, but more into, just buying the hardware and using their own secure network. However, there is still um, even from commercial customer, there is still a request sometimes to be okay. We want our data to be downloaded in these countries or to not be downloaded
Mhm.
in these countries, for example.
Okay. And on the hardware side, I think you already mentioned that you were happy to sell like the in-space terminals. So it sounds like you're happy to sell the ground station as well. If like, for example, a government came along and said, "Hey, we want a ground station."
If it's, I will say we will sell our ground station, to non-competitors in our
Mm,
case. So typically they are, government institutes, yes.
okay, gotcha.
But
Okay. Yeah.
we do partner with different ground station network or different, companies who also deploy ground station because we want to give more access point to our customers. So we do have this kind of framework where we can work together, with our.
Yeah, so this is a actually interesting point. So let's say I have this like everything I'm hearing, is just like optical just seems so great that like one thing is like ultimately everything should just move like as much as possible to optical. I don't know if you agree to that, by the way, but like uh, uh, it seems in any event there would be probably some interim phase where it's a mix of RF and optical. And so, what does that look like? Is it kind of like, is there going to be this phase where customer satellites are just going to have both a traditional radio and an optical terminal, or what are you seeing right now?
I think they will keep to coexist. I don't think one will, remove the other because each have, different advantages and constraints, right? So let's imagine, if you want to send a lot of data and very secured, yes, optical communication is great, but um, if it's, to go through the atmosphere, you have some constraint there. If it's also in terms of how to say, indeed, in terms of security, you want optical, but you have also constraint on the pointing system of your platform, for example. You want to have, very good pointing capabilities of your satellite, and sometimes you don't need that. When you are thinking about, for example, Internet of Things, IoT application, you don't need laser. Like the amount of data is
Mm,
small. You want something
yeah.
that will just emit a radio which is easy to connect to. So I don't think they will remove each other. I think we will keep to coexist for
Okay.
different applications.
I'm just thinking because I mean we're also seeing some of these sort of I mean obviously if you're using RF communications, right, you need what we call the spectrum, right?
Yeah,
And we're seeing like some of the spectrum. I'm actually not a spectrum expert, but from what I see on a high level and what I hear from my sort of colleagues, it's getting very constrained, and we're
yeah,
seeing like some ridiculous. Well, I don't want to call them ridiculous. Still, some very high prices being paid for spectrum. I
yeah.
just wonder whether eventually there's going to be some business model where people are like, well, we can't get the spectrum here. Like, screw it. We're just going to go straight to optical. It's better anyway.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the RF spectrum, congestion is a big issue. It can take months or years, or sometimes you just never can get the spectrum you want. So that's a problem which you don't have with optical. Um, but I see, for example, what I expect if we are talking about, satellite, is that once optical will be like well established, you will have some frequencies or some system, in the satellite which will change. For example, you will just use a very simple a radiocom terminal on your satellite just to receive command or transmit just basic information of the satellite, but not actually for downloading the data of the mission. So then you can have a very simple terminal and also like specific in a specific spectrum for that, in a small spectrum, while you can use optical to download the data. So maybe it's you will move to UHF VHF, for example, for something very simple, and you will not use your X band anymore because you want laser to send a lot of data.
And so that's interesting. So if you're kind of in the situation where you have both a radio and then the optical terminal, and you're talking about sort of like you switch in a smart way, is that who would do the switching? Like, is that something like you guys could provide the software for, or is there other solutions, or how would that work in practice?
What do you mean doing the switching? Like,
yeah, so it seems like sometimes, or do you think it's just like naturally segregated, like you're saying, like the sort of like satellite commands, okay, that's always on IF, and like the payload data stream is always on optical.
I
That's
think
not
that would be, I
okay.
think I expect, we will go in toward this way. Yes. You
Yeah.
know your command, and then you want to download data, you just laser.
Okay. And I guess the only other situation is for some reason there would be a failure on one of them that you automatically switch to the
Well,
other
the
one.
thing is, especially during the commissioning, and sometimes you have some difficulties to do the control of your satellite at the beginning. You need a bit of time to do that. You prefer to use radio communication because beam is wider, so it's also easier to get, right?
Yeah.
So usually, I expect you will still use only RF, at the beginning of your mission to do the satellite commissioning, and then
Okay.
you can switch to optical.
Okay. So it sounds like really we're gonna have sort of both modes in parallel, at least for the foreseeable future. So we are, I mean, kind of coming back to the cost point. Okay, so even if you're kind of having this model where you convert the upfront investment in the hardware into like a ongoing monthly payment, there's still like basically additional like mass and volume taken and I guess some power taken on your satellite. How much of an issue is that for people that they have to put additional equipment on? And yeah, I guess that's the first question here.
Yeah, I think, well, first, in our case, we try to make our terminal, as easy as possible to plug with your platform. Of course, but there can be some adaptation to do. But, we try to make it as much as possible plug and play, even though, a true plug and play is not, it's not really feasible. The thing is, how do we, like, what's your question again? Repeat. How do we?
Yeah, like how much of a sort of, I don't want to call it like a switching issue of a hurdle that is that people have to put like an additional system, the
Yeah,
terminal,
right.
on
So
on
the
a
thing is,
satellite.
the thing is, if you look at it, for example, for the power, a lot of people think that laser use so much power because people think about Star Wars, about the Death Star,
Yeah.
but it's not like this. So if actually you take the power, per gigabyte we send, it's actually lower than RF
Oh
because
wow. Okay.
it's also a very concentrated beam. So
Mm-hmm.
all the power is in one small concentrated beam versus you send radio.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at okay, the size, yes, you have it take a bit of size, take a bit of extra weight, that's true. But if you look at the swap, size, weight, and power
Yeah.
per the gigabyte downloaded, it's way lower than radio on all aspects. Plus, I think we are coming, in the next few years. I mean, already we have seen that the launch price per kilogram has been getting crazy low, in the last
Mm-hmm.
10, 20 years. And that will keep going, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I believe is that the impact now, the impact of the size and weight on a satellite will get lower and lower because what was a limiting factor before was, you want to save the size, you want to save the weight because you want to save on your launch cost. But this is going to change. So now the impact, will actually be very positive because on one side you have the swap for gigabyte downloaded, which is much lower. And at the same time, there will be less and less consideration, I believe, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, size, weight, and power.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So let me ask, like another aspect, I guess, of the size, the volume, and the way it is. This clearly can only make sense from like a certain size of satellite
Right.
upwards, right? I mean, this clearly is not for like a 3U satellite.
No,
So, like,
no.
what kind of satellites are we talking about here? Like, what's the sort of range where this makes sense?
In our case, we looked into, platform we are compatible with and at least a certain, pointing accuracy. We see that we can be compatible with satellite from 50 kilogram, roughly. And clearly, CubeSat, I'm not saying there is no market, but I think the market for CubeSat is very small for optical com. First, because of the need, right? You need to have a satellite which actually are required to send a lot of data. And even though you have CubeSat which start to generate more and more data, if you have a good X band and already it's enough constraint, on the pointing. If you have a good X band, you can already send, the data that your CubeSat will need to send. So I think there is a matter of yes, of course, size, weight, and power, but also in terms of platform capabilities and at the root in terms of need. Is there actually a need?
Yeah.
The only need I could see for CubeSat and LaserCom will be on the security aspect, because then you use laser and maybe you don't use 10 gigabit per second laser, you can use a lower data rate and you can use it for security reason. Yet, you need to have good pointing capabilities, which in our system we have already our own pointing and tracking capabilities. So you can put it in your satellite, and we have one hemisphere view. We can track by ourselves, the station.
Okay.
The satellite does not need to do it. So if the satellite is doing, an Earth observation mission, it can keep doing his Earth observation mission, and we can at the same time send the data.
So it's like the satellite has its like regular attitude control system, whatever they're using, and you're kind of doing your own thing, gimbaling,
Yes.
I guess, around and
Yes.
okay, that makes sense. And so, okay, let's shift over from this a little bit towards, I mean, because we're talking a lot here about how this fits into satellites, but so a natural question that brings up is like when you're doing your marketing, your business development, going to market, I mean, do you go directly to the end customers or do you actually market through those intermediaries that basically the satellite integrators that then end up selling to the end customers?
Okay. That's a good thing. We actually take it in different ways. We go both, in our case, from satellite operators and satellite integrators, because the satellite operators are the one, who will actually give us the data and sell the data.
Yeah.
So they're the one who will need more data or to get it in a more secured way, but they are not the one implementing the system in their satellite.
Yeah.
So there are cases where satellite operator and integrators is one same company. That's
Sure.
great. Yeah, that's perfect. But if it's not the case, we approach satellite operators and we tell them, look what our system can bring to you. You could have this amount of data every day compared to what you have now. Imagine what you can do. And, we talk to them. And at the same time, we talk to the satellite integrators and we say, look, we have this solution. We can even give you the terminal, which, you don't even have to pay upfront for it.
Yeah.
Your customer don't have to pay upfront for it. And you can go to your customer, the satellite operator, and tell them, look, we can offer you a platform with more capabilities. So we really approach, both sides.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually. And so what is I mean, when are you have you started commercial operations, or if not, when are you starting the commercial operations of this business model you described?
Sorry, I didn't get what you said.
Have you started commercially operating this business model yet? And if not, when are you going to start commercially operating?
So we are actually delivering our first flight model to a customer in the next coming months. And we are also going to deploy our first commercial optical ground station in Q2. And we are launching in space in October.
Okay.
So, then what we do actually with our first customer, we have some time where we actually demonstrate the terminal, and then we switch to a service mode where actually they use our system to download the data for their mission.
And where's that first ground station? Where's it going to be? I mean, I know you're based in Luxembourg, and I mean, I love Luxembourg, but that does not strike me as a good
You can see
location.
right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, first one will be in Spain, in the Pyrenees. Then we have few more, in the pipeline. We have New Mexico, Greece, France, South Africa, New Zealand, Mongolia, a bit all around the globe. But first one will be in Spain.
I mean, some of these locations you described, like the Pyrenees and Mongolia, and I mean, you said before you're choosing the locations also so the atmosphere is nicer, so to
Right,
say. But
right.
is it easy? But and then you still have to basically run fiber to your ground station, I assume, right? Like, is that
Yes,
easy? Is that easy to do in those locations?
correct. So actually what we do, I mean, we have several criteria, we take into account. As you said, yes, one is the weather, but not only. Ideally, we want to be also at 1,000 meters of altitude. So we have a bit less dense atmosphere. And we go at location where there is already infrastructure. So we don't go, in the middle of nowhere. And well, if you look at it, actually, what is an optical ground station? It's a telescope, that we readapt, and we have a station. So imagine any places where you have an observatory can be potentially, a good target for us, because also these places, we already have infrastructure there.
Okay.
They can even have data we can use, for network, like weather data.
Okay. And so how many ground stations do you think you will need in the end to run your business model?
Or in the end, well, we can offer the baseline service with 4 ground station, well located, smartly located. But in terms, of a bit longer term, we plan to have 50 stations by 2030. So every year, we want to deploy more. But the idea is to first deploy 4 and to have the baseline service.
Okay. And so on the marketing, on the customer side, without going into confidential detail, like what does the pipeline look like now? For example, what is the split between like is it more commercial? Is it more government? Is it sort of even?
So for now, it's more commercial in terms of concrete demand for solution. I will say we have already an agreement with more than 25 companies who actually committed, or at least if not committed yet, have an intent to use our solution. On the defense side, the thing is that before you sell anything to the military, you need to really have your solution demonstrated, used in a nominal way, right? So for now, all the projects we have on the defense side are more on the R&D, R&D side. So we have a European Defense Funds project, and also we are part of the NATO Diana Accelerator. But in terms of sell, like when you look at the time it takes to develop a product and to actually sell to the military, the average I've seen recently was 8 years,
Wow.
So,
Okay. So if your plans go well and you sort of like it's 2030, you have like many commercial customers, government customers, 50 ground stations. Is that sort of like call it like the steady growth state of the company, or is there any other sort of like, I don't know, product
that's
extensions, or other exciting things you're
yes,
thinking about in the medium term?
right. So space to ground, is one thing, and clearly it's not the only thing we are working on, because we are going also to start developing inter-satellite link solution. So clearly for us, it's not only about deploying station and having this link, but what we want is to actually expand this link, not only for LEO to ground, but further away, MEO, GEO, Moon, Mars. You can go as far as you want. This is what we have in mind. But we are also exploring different kind of application, more on the military side, where we are looking into making our solution, dual use with application in space situational awareness, with application in navigation also when you don't have, a GNSS solution available. Or with application where you can do dazzling or blinding, of targets. So we
Okay.
are looking into different things as well on the defense side.
Yeah, we go all the way back to what you mentioned before, like the Death Star, the higher
Yes.
power requirements. Okay, well, that's many interesting avenues. Okay, cool. As we're kind of coming towards sort of the end of the episode here, let me ask you also. Very often asked entrepreneurs if they're like not in LA or some like completely standard place. You're in Luxembourg. How's that been as a space ecosystem?
Well, Luxembourg has been great, and Luxembourg is still great. What's very interesting here is that there is this mindset of, at least for the space business, to support the space business and to make the ecosystem grow. Where actually the support we got from the Luxembourg Space Agency was instrumental for us, because that's how actually we started here, and that's why we arrived here. We got a strong support from the beginning, and what is good here is also the fact that it's a small country, but it's a very dynamic, so the ecosystem grows fast. We can interact with everyone in very, very easily, whether I'm talking to government or other companies. And the fact that, of course, Luxembourg is a member state, we can also access all the project from ESA. But even though Luxembourg is great for us, we grow here. Of course, we are thinking about expanding as well to other places, where, for example, in the US, the market, especially in optical com, is pretty big. So this is something also we are looking into and planning to expand there in the near future.
Yeah, that makes sense. So much has been driven, right, by the Space Development Agency's requirements. Like you said, it sounds like you guys are using the SDA standard as well.
Yeah, that's
So
correct.
it obviously has driven a lot of optical growth and standardization. I guess the thing, like you're saying, Luxembourg is very small, right? As you can probably almost probably walk to a company like Spire, who could be a natural customer for you guys, right? So those are like some advantages of the ecosystem. Okay, I forgot to ask you at the beginning, like how did you all start this? Like, how did you decide to start an optical communications company?
Okay. Well, at first, actually, at that time, I was in Taiwan, and I was doing my PhD there. And with some friends, we started a company in Taiwan, and we were actually providing space system engineering support, project management, procurement, launch campaign support to different institute or companies. So it was more, on the consultancy side. And we had one of these projects where we supported Paris Observatory. And Paris Observatory was having a mission with an instrument which was used to detect exoplanets. So they could do a precise pointing of a faraway target in a very small volume. And we were thinking, what's the next big challenge in space? And it's like on Earth, it's about moving data. We have more and more data, we want to move data. What is one solution to that? It's optical communication. What is one of the big challenges? Pointing and tracking. We thought maybe we can, reuse this solution and adapt it to pointing and tracking of optical communication. This is how we started. This is how we got the idea. And, we submitted this to a competition organized by Luxembourg, and we won the competition. And they said, hey guys, okay, here's, we can give you some funding if you open here and develop your idea here. So this is how we actually opened in Luxembourg and started in laser communication. Even though we don't use this solution at all, we develop our own solution. But this is the genesis the Odyssey.
Mm. Very interesting. I must admit when you started with like, oh, I was in Taiwan, I immediately actually had to think like, well, that's one country that should definitely use like secure communications like lasers, so certain other countries can't easily intercept their communications.
True, that's true. They are looking very hard on this right now. Yeah.
Okay. Jordan, last two questions are always the same. One, if you weren't doing Odysseus Space, but you're following space in general, like, is there any other like areas of commercial space you find really interesting at the moment?
If I were not doing space at all, you mean
No, no, if
mostly?
you weren't doing your company,
Ah,
but like still something in space, is there something else in commercial space, like some like, theme, topic, business opportunity that you think is very interesting? So not specific companies, right? But like
okay.
themes.
Right, right. Well, what has been driving me since I'm a kid is exploration. It's to see, beyond and beyond and beyond and further away. And I think, even though from a business perspective, it's maybe challenging a bit right now, but any companies which, look really to bring the human further away in space, Moon, Mars, etc.,
Hmm.
will be of very strong interest for me. But then, this is something actually we tried at first, but we know it's a very long term, so we need to look at what's actually bringing money in the near
Yeah.
future.
Well,
But
everyone has to do
definitely
that,
interest.
right? Even Elon is doing that, right? He was like, what brings the money so we can go to
Right.
Mars?
Yeah. But anything, which can help, to explore other planets will be of my interest. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, and then the kind of, I guess, following on maybe from this sort of exploration theme that you had as a kid. Sort of, our last question is always about favorite science fiction. So what would be some of yours?
Okay. For favorite science fiction. Okay. A book or a movie?
It can be book, movie, TV series. It could be like cartoons. You're free to choose.
I think, one of my favorite sci-fi movies, but that will be the old one. It's actually Planet of the Apes. Because Planet of the Apes, I mean, I've seen that one when I was a kid, the one with Charlton Heston, and I think it can bring a lot of thought about where humanity is going and what we should do, not do, and how now to prepare for a better future in a
Hmm.
way that we don't destroy yourself.
Yeah, fair enough. We don't want to end up in that scenario.
Yeah.
That's a good one. No one has mentioned it before, but I do like the old movies as well. Jordan, thank you so much. Best of luck, everything you guys are doing, and maybe we'll speak sometime in a few years again.
Yeah. Thank you, Raphael. That was fun.
Thanks.
And that's it for another nominal episode of the Space Business Podcast. And once more, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform, such as Apple or Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_space. We're also on LinkedIn under the Space Business Podcast. Lastly, if you have any feedback, including ideas for guests, and that may even include yourself if you have an exciting space story to tell, or interested in becoming a sponsor, or really for any other suggestions, you can drop us an email at spacebusinesspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening, and see you for the next episode.